Hi everyone, welcome to Insider Chats. I'm Itamar, one of the co-founder at Argent, and you have here also Julian.
Hey Tamar, hey everybody.
So this is a first for us. This new Twitter space. The idea is really to get informal, casual chat for everyone to get to know people behind Argent better. But then we'll make this recurring on a monthly basis. We'll try to get awesome host. We won't be chilling projects or token. We'll be we'll be having honest and fun conversation around Web3 and people behind Web3. And maybe the best way to get started would be to introduce ourselves. I think Argent, a lot of you know probably Argent, the project, but probably a lot of you have no idea who's behind it. We are three founders, Gerald, Julian, and myself. And so today, Julian and myself we can share more about our story. Julian, do you want to get started?
Sure. So I'm Julien. I'm one of the three co-founders, as Itamar mentioned. I'm originally a physicist, a quantum physicist. Did a few startups in that space, focusing on quantum physics and then security based on quantum physics, so stuff such as quantum cryptography, which was quite interesting. And gradually, this transitioned me to blockchain. Uh, and yeah, at Argent, so been there from the start, obviously. And at Argent, I mostly focus on everything related to the blockchain. So as you know, we are three co-founders. We try to separate what we do within Argent. And so I would say my area of expertise and responsibility is everything related to blockchain, the protocol, the smart contracts, and everything.
Awesome. And maybe a few words on myself. I'm not a physicist, so I'm the only founder at Argent that doesn't have a PhD. I'm probably the dumbest of the three, but I'm an engineer. I've actually studied with Gerald and Julian, but then they kept going to their PhD. I've worked in tech for a long time. What most people don't know, I was actually a consultant at the very start of my career. So I didn't start as a software engineer, really. Then I work at Amazon. I was one of the very early product manager. I launched like the shoe store in the UK, the sports store, and all these new product line that didn't exist at the time. So I'm that old. I then worked actually in payment at Visa, also something many people don't know. So it's a very interesting. I would say it's very interesting to see payment in the more legacy world and then compare that to the world of crypto. And then I did startups with Gerald actually first for many years. We had a company called Kukunu. We were doing travel planning. Then we like travel planning software. Then we did stuff to like a discovery layer on top of Foursquare. I guess we're that old that Foursquare was a huge thing at the time, and we would have a really fun project called Scoville, where you could discover like great restaurant, cafe, etc., based on your Foursquare activity. And then where we did a much better job, John and I, was to with two other founders, we created the largest mobile brain training game. It was called Peak Brain Training. So it was basically an app where you would play a ton of games to train things like memory, attention, uh, word fluency, etc. And we had 60 million, 60, I think, 60 million downloads. So it was a quite large subscription business. And we sold it to a big book publisher back in 2016. And that's really how, I mean, the segue to how we got into crypto. I would say that was my entry into crypto. It was an employee kept telling me about an ICO I had to join. I had no money before selling the business, so I never listened to him. And that was actually Ethereum ICO. But that's really how I heard about blockchain first, so quite late, I would say 2016. However, Gerald and Julian, you guys kept talking about blockchain. I remember you buying a book and as physicists reading very thoroughly. You never told me I had to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum. You just read and read a lot of stuff, and I never got it until I made my first transfer. But I think, Julia, you got into the space. I mean, you were aware of the space much earlier, if I remember well.
Yes. Well, actually, for me, I would say third time was the charm. I was introduced to Bitcoin during my PhD, I think as early as 2009, probably, by an older PhD student who was, getting excited about Bitcoin. And so he really wanted to tell me what this cool technology was. And if I remember correctly, I think he purchased something like a hard drive using Bitcoin. And honestly, after that explanation, for me, it made no sense. I was like, nah, this is a technology for geek. It will never pick up. That was 2009. I think in 2014, I had another friend, software developer, who tells me about this new crypto money, this new platform, Ethereum, where you can write smart contract. He sends me a link to the Ethereum website, and I actually had a look, scroll through the use cases, and kind of the same feeling. Yeah, no, this is not, this is never going to work. It's a waste of time. So that was 2014. So you can tell I'm really good at sensing great opportunities and great technologies. But then come I would say 2016 or 2017, and as Itamar mentioned, him and Gerald were working on their last company before Argent. I was working for another company doing machine to machine and IoT based in California. And so I was actually working remote in Brussels, and Gerald back then was working remote from your company, which was based in the UK as well. So Gerald was in Brussels, I would say 3 or 4 days a week. And we started just getting together, so we wouldn't feel lonely, basically. And so working side by side. And of course, because we are, tech people, we started exchanging information about technology. And I think it's actually Gerald who threw the first crypto or blockchain paper. And we started reading and thought it was interesting. And at that point, I started to finally get it and get really excited. So I would say for a couple of months, we started exchanging, papers, article, projects, and stuff like that, and really got excited. But you can say, in 2009, I didn't get it. In 2014, I didn't get it. And I finally got it at the beginning of 2017. And so, yeah, we got really excited by the tech. I mean, you guys were at the end of your previous story, and I was actually kind of stuck in that company that wasn't going anywhere. And so we kind of felt that the time, was right to finally do a project together, something we had, been talking for a long time. And so I remember, I think we kind of told you if we do something, we should do something in that space. And it's about more or less at the same time that you got excited because you did your first transaction.
Exactly. I remember very well. I tried to create a Coinbase account. It wouldn't work because I was a Belgian based in the UK. And so my phone number wouldn't match the country of my ID. I managed to do like a Kraken account. Then one of our engineer in the previous company helped me set up my ledger. I made that first transfer. It was like virtually instant. It costed cents at the time. So gas on L1 was was very, very, very cheap. I went to you guys. I said, "That's amazing. We have to do a next thing in that space." And I remember you look at me like it's been 3 to 6 months we are telling you about that. But I think until I made that one little transfer, I on one hand I was like, "That's totally absurd." I just installed a USB stick and I had to write on paper in a closed room with no window those words. But on the other hand, I was like, I just made a payment. There was no one in the middle. This is mind blowing. But before we jump, maybe in the how we got to then create Argent, something everyone asks me is like, how do we know each other? I spend a lot of time with new founders, and always they're like, how did you find your co-founders? Because that seems to be a huge pain point for founders. And I tend to tell them I'm not the right person to ask because I didn't really find you guys. We knew each other for a long time. Julian, I would say the two of us, since we are 18, probably.
Yeah, we met
first day
first day of uni.
Yeah, so first day of university, so that's a long time. So and Gerald, I was probably three years old. So Gerald and I literally were in the same preschool, school, high school, university. We lived on the same street. So it's been a very, very long time. So for those asking me how to find a co-founder, nursery school is probably my answer. But I think we tried 2 or 3 times to do a company together, and we were never free. I would say you were in the middle of a project when we were at the end, and then vice versa. We were never like free at the or out of project at the same time.
Yeah, I guess like everything, it's a question of timing, you could say. But yes, I remember exactly that. That when I was between project, you guys were, in the middle of one, and vice versa. But it's funny because I remember actually the very first time we probably discussed doing something together. I don't know if it's a story we should be sharing, but I remember very clearly that day because we were still at uni. It was probably one of these depressing Belgian gray days, and we decided to go to a spa instead of going to classes. I don't know if you remember that. And so we went to a kind of a shitty spa around the university on a normal weekday, and we were like sitting in a jacuzzi, discussing that one day we'll make a company and it will be amazing. And what's even funnier is that on a weekday in the spa in Brussels, it turns out that you only have old people. So there was basically a bunch of old people and then 20-something guys sitting in a jacuzzi dreaming about doing a startup one day. So for me, I think that's probably the first time we mentioned doing something together. We had no idea what and how and even what it means to be doing a startup. But I think that's probably the first time we discussed that. And then, periodically, every 3 or 4 years, the subject came back until 2017.
I remember very well, although I have a bad memory. Was it one of those days where you weren't allowed to wear a swimming suit?
Exactly.
Because yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah,
wanted to skip that part, but you were naked, surrounded by old ladies and old guys, naked as well. So that was fun.
A lot of the important Argent decision happened in a jacuzzi with no swimming suit. Yeah, that I remember. And then but let's skip to the more dressed up part where we started thinking we need to do something. I remember I was in London. We went to Brussels. We rented actually like an office for a week. We locked ourselves there. And in some way, what we described then was extremely close to what Argent is today. We were talking back in 2017 around having like a bank without a bank. We would have savings accounts with ease to staking. At the time, it was it Serenity? Was I think we were talking the Serenity release of Ethereum. We had no idea when it would happen at the time. Julian, do you remember how we got into the old Guardian stuff and all the account abstraction model of Argent? You have better memory, I think, than me on that.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. What I remember, clearly is actually us doing like cliche post-it sessions with IDs. And as you mentioned, we had like, oh no, ETH2, it can be a savings. We have ENS, it can be an identity. And we started collecting all these post-it and then kind of grouping them together and keeping the ones that we liked. And it's actually one of your friend, Gary, who came, I think, for lunch for an hour or something like that. And we showed him all these post-it. He was like, hey, idiots, you're basically recreating a bank. And we're like, oh, he's right. So I think actually the idea of doing like a bank without the bank is actually Gary who kind of put the word on it. Even though we had all these pieces together, ENS, ETH2, staking, and so on. Now, the Guardian model and smart contract, I don't remember exactly how it came back. What is clear is that I think because we were completely new to the space, it was obvious that the current model, didn't make sense. As you mentioned earlier, this idea of writing your password, your secret phrase on a piece of paper, and that all your money depends on that piece of paper I remember that for us, it was completely absurd. And because we wanted to crack the user experience already at that point, we wanted to do something for users. We wanted to make access to that technology easy. It was clear for us that we needed something different. And we probably started thinking about smart contract. But I think the Guardian ID, I partly remember it coming from a Bitcoin paper by the founder of Avalanche, but I think it's also you meeting in London one of the founder of Bancor, and I don't remember if in parallel we kind of read the paper and you had that discussion with that guy, or if it's actually him that kind of pointed us towards reading that Bitcoin paper. But I think that's where there's this description of using something like a vault, having some kind of like two accounts and multiple keys. So I remember exactly the paper from which we took the inspiration, but I don't remember exactly how the paper got into our hands. But I feel there's a connection with you meeting someone from Bancor.
I think you're right. It was a conference in London. Was Banker that just raised? I think at the time it was like a massive ICO. I think it was like 130 million. Everyone and was talking about it, and then I randomly met him, and he was like, "Oh, if you go in that direction, I always wanted to do something like that." And they written a piece around how you could recover assets like that. And indeed, I remember this paper from him. So I think that's the first time we officially give credit to Bancor and Avalanche founders for a lot of the little spark that seeded a lot of what we did at the time.
And by the way, funny story, we were together a couple of months ago in Tel Aviv for Starkware Sessions, the conference by Starkware, and some guy came to me and introduced himself as being a professor at the Israeli university there. And he said, "Yeah, I'm studying authentication, and actually your Guardian model is amazing. I actually have a theoretical framework that proves that it's optimal in most of the situation. Where did you guys came up with that idea? What's the theory behind it? Is it just like your intuition, or do you have a mathematical model behind it?" I was kind of honest saying this is partly intuition. But what's really funny is that the guy is actually the co-author of that paper we just discussed. He used to be a postdoc with Emergent Searer in the US, and he's actually the co-author of that paper, which doesn't describe exactly Guardian and recovery. I think it's more the idea of having a vault and time lock and keys that can unlock that vault. But I kind of felt that the circle was completed. They wrote that paper. We took this idea and made it something that actually works really well. And then him, 5 years later, make a mathematical model proving that what we build based on his concept is actually optimal. And then we meet in Israel. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that was a fun turn. Very unexpected that they were, having research paper done on the Argent security model. But I think that's pretty cool. Let's go back to, we're in 2017. We had defined Argent. What people don't know is actually Julian built everything. You built everything by yourself. You were so fed up of your other job. I remember you built a first smart contract, but also even an iOS app. You built like the full proof of concept.
Yes, and even we had a light backend with Lambda functions on Amazon. So basically 3 technologies I never touched before. I need to give some credit to Gerald, because Gerald helped me with the iOS app. He didn't have the time to write it, but he actually helped me, kind of scaffold the iOS project. But yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun learning like 3 technologies at the same time, and at the same time experimenting with our model. I remember all the discussion we had, and I would try to write a smart contract, and then do that very simple prototype to demonstrate that it works. I remember the first time I think we did a recovery, we were really, really excited. But yes, it was actually a fun time, I think, building everything together from scratch in such a short period. But yeah, I think we rapidly identified that we were onto something. Even if it was a very simple and basic prototype, I think it was clear that this new paradigm of using smart contract for to enable great security and great UX. It was rapidly obvious that it was, I think, the right direction.
And I think right now with like the entire world talking about icon abstraction, part of us feel like it's been like 5 years we tell you about that. Like, couldn't you notice before? But you're right, that was pretty fun. Then I think it's really 2018 that we had funding, built the team, and started building the product in a more professional fashion, I would say. What only the OG will remember, what people don't know, is we launched Argent somewhere was it around DEF CON Prague So I guess
Yeah.
somewhere in 2018, and we would pay like you wouldn't know about gas, you wouldn't know anything. We would pay for all the transaction. And I remember all the Ethereum OG were telling us, "You're crazy. You're paying gas. It's insane." And of course, we hadn't seen the previous bull market, so we had no idea that gas could go to crazy amounts. They were like, "That's fine. It will scale. The Ethereum chain will scale. We'll be fine." And so the UX was amazing. We would you wouldn't see transaction fees. You could pay, trade, do everything instantly. That was really smooth, and of course, very smooth, and there was no congestion. But I remember, for me, the most crazy time or scary time was really the alpha phase. At some point we were building in the open. The smart contract were there, open source and audited at the time. But then we had to build the app, and we started, releasing the app bit by bit. And at some point, there is we have really. I remember it was the early weeks. The app was half broken, was really in development, early alpha, and then we had that ticket in our Trello board that was like, put a message to say don't deposit more than $100 or something like that. And then as we are developing that little message that said don't deposit more than $100, there's a user, I won't name him, but we met him. I don't know if he's on the space. So really the OG Argent user is a founder of another company in the space. There is a user that deposits $70,000. And we are like, what is, like, we had never done a recovery on mainnet. We had never, it was really, we were just out of testnet. We knew it was working in principle from a smart contract perspective, but we had never tested yet the full flow on mainnet. That guy put $70,000, and of course, I think a week or 2 weeks later, he needs to do an on-chain recovery. And so he was the one really testing live that on-chain recovery on mainnet for the first time. He did get access, back access to the wallet, but I would say that was probably the first gray hair we had in this crypto journey. Plus the fact, of course, that the entire market crashed 1 week after we raised funding. That was the early 2018 crash. We raised, Bitcoin was at 20,000, was the people were on the moon, and then suddenly everything collapsed. That was probably our first. We started in the very first bear, in that very first bear market, basically.
I think to add to the story of the 70K, if I remember correctly, him needing a recovery, it's because of a bug that we introduced in the iOS application. Again, everything was alpha, and if I remember correctly, we had at moment we made a release, and someone almost immediately while testing realized that the app would erase private keys in some very, very edge case, so just erasing the private key. And then at that very moment is one user that contacts us and says something strange happened, and it was actually him, if I remember correctly. But anyway, again, it was a great testament to our model. Even if we made a mistake as a company and we erased the private key, the funds were perfectly safe, and he could recover his account within the 36 hours as defined by the smart contract. So if at the same time we learned a lot, I do think it was a great testament to our security model. But yes, it was kind of a rocky week, I would say.
What would be the first high we got? Like more of a positive win from the early days, would you say?
A high? Well, I mean, this one is actually that was like I would say that story is a very low, and then a very good high, because everything turned out to be exactly as it was supposed to be. I mean, I think one clear high was where, one day, kind of the same way we realized that day a user deposited 50K. I would say a year later, we started to do some on-chain analytics, tracking assets going in and out of the wallet. And then one day we see a huge spark, and basically we have more than 1 billion in TVL, because there was a deposit of 500 million or something for one user. So I remember us, first of all, thinking there was probably something wrong in our analytics, and Gerald testing all his script and all his data until we realized that it was actually true. And there was someone that deposited $500 million on Argent. So I would say that was quite a
Yeah,
good high.
that I remember well because we had. I was following more closely analytic every week. It would be someone minting some shitcoin, putting it on Uniswap. Therefore, we would get a price, and it would look like $10 billion. But of course, it was just one person having minted some random coin, and so we were sure that was again the same thing. And then it happened to be real. So I think the idea that someone could put $500 million just after 10 seconds after downloading an app was a high. But at the same time, I think that was close to when gas started to exploding. So I would say that for me, that was the biggest low. What people might not know about that kind of abstraction is you have to, because smart contract and Ethereum cannot submit transaction, you need relayers, or what in some new IP we call EIP, we call bundlers. But so that means Argent had to have an infrastructure that would have ease that would be able to send those transactions. And once a month I would top up 1 ETH, 2 ETH, 3 ETH. It would be really fine. And then DeFi summer happened. Gas increased 1,000x, I think. And so I would wake up 2 to 3 times at night with alerts because I had to top up basically those relayers and feed them with gas. And for me, that was in some way a big turning point for Argent because we were a product for mainstream. We were like all about mainstream, super easy. We wouldn't mention gas. You wouldn't do ERC20 approve. It was really like using Revolut or some neobanks. And then suddenly users have to pay gas. It costs a fortune because smart contract accounts are even more expensive than EOA. And the only type of users we can have are those massive whales that have like millions of dollars or 500 million, which was, I would say, great vanity metrics, but not at all what we were trying to achieve. Security was a big part, but we wanted mainstream adoption, simplicity, and paying $5, $10, $50 for a transaction is definitely not that. I remember when I think it was one of our employees in the early days was like super apologetic because he had made a mistake when deploying a test wallet and he had hard-coded the gas at 10 Gwei. And think about the fact that ETH was few $100, not thousand. And so instead of having the gas estimate in real time, it would be 10 Gwei, gas price estimated, it would be 10 Gwei. And so of course we paid too much gas for that test wallet, and he wanted to refund me from his personal money. And now in hindsight, like we're like 10 Gwei is a dream. 10 Gwei at $500 ETH was like, I wish it was that. And I remember we even had this hard cap that if it returns more than 10 Gwei, it means it's a bug in the gas estimate tool, because the gas price would never be 10 Gwei. It would be 1, 2, 10 would be a mistake. These were very, very, very different times.
Yeah, that was definitely a stressful period. And you're right. I think we went at that time from the perfect experience and everybody loving Argent and our user base, growing, and because of gas price, becoming crazy. And as we mentioned, we had the fantastic idea of subsidizing everything. So the creation of the wallet, the transaction, and so on, it started to cost us a lot of money. So we had to surface some of that cost to users. And in the end, we started making the app less UX friendly in a sense. We had to surface some of the very friction that we wanted to make disappear. We had to resurface some of it if we wanted to survive as a company. So yeah, that was certainly a frustrating time. But I think it's also at that point we realized that layer 1 would not be our future home, in a sense, that we would never onboard, a billion user on Ethereum at 1. And I think that's also, at that moment was a low, but that's also where we kind of identify, a path forward and realize that, layer 2s, which were not ready, but people were starting to talk more and more about it, was clearly the future for Argent. So, I mean, at the same time, it's usually when you hit the bottom that you can push and go back to the surface and you see a path to your next step. And I think for us, it was clearly that. I think realizing that our model economically wasn't working. We could build the perfect UX experience, but it wasn't working on Ethereum L1. I think was, in a sense, a very important learning. And we managed to go through that without disappearing as a company. And so we can actually be where we are today, reproducing that model, but on layer twos at much, much reduced cost. So, I mean, in everything there's bad, but there's actually something very good out of it. So
Yeah, I remember that being a rough transition for the team because there was no roll-ups were not a thing. They were ideas. No one. So whether it's optimistic roll-up, ZK roll-up, they were just some early ideas. We were talking to the Starkware team and ZK and MaterLab ZK Sync team already at that time, but they had very simple tech at the time. So you had ZK Sync Lite for just payment, Starkware, StarkX. You didn't have those permissionless layer 2. The same on the optimistic rollup side, you didn't have them yet. So it was just alternative L1 or side chains. And the team had to go through that phase where we had to almost rebuild everything with no clear view on when will they be ready. And it took I would say till this year. It's really now the year where the platforms we are building on Starknet and ZK era are really getting ready for prime time. So it's I think we are a bit we've been quite lucky to go through that phase. As you say, I think if we had been maybe less funded, or I would claim if we had less funders. People ask us always, how do you navigate these low and highs? And I think with 3 funders, we have always one funder that is in a high and that has has a positive attitude, because it's very easy to be depressed when everything you build is kind of collapsing, because now everything costs like a fortune. Even a recovery would cost a fortune. And when the next tech is not yet there, but then one of us would meet a team or other people and suddenly be super bullish. You would always have one person there to lift the rest up.
Yeah, no, that's very true. But I think it's also a credit to the team, because they all stick with us and they stick with our vision. And even, I mean, that law was not only a law for us, it was a law for the team as well, because they put a lot of effort into building something, and they were seeing that, the model wasn't working. So I think, for them to also stick around and believing that, okay, this is, we've proven something, the timing is not right, but, on the next step, it will be amazing. And for all of them to stick with us and be on board with that vision, I think is also, a lot of credit for them as well.
True. And I just realized what's the other big decision that happened with or without underwear in a jacuzzi. If you remember, in Portugal, I don't know if you can think about what it was with Gerald and you.
Did we go to Portugal for that decision?
No, we were there. We happened to be there when it happened.
No,
so a big company offered to buy us.
Oh, yes.
We were I don't know if it's a low or high, but I would say that was kind of a turning point when we were like, it was before the B round, was a while ago, offered to buy us. I think a lot of people would have been very happy, and I think the 3 of us agreeing that we would not go for it, I think pretty quickly was probably, I would say it's a high. Even though we got a lot of gray hair after that, I think we knew the 3 of us were in the same mindset to build something very, very, very big. So I would put it as a high, even though I have now twice more gray hair after years more in crypto.
Yeah, no, definitely. But actually, the way I remember it is that actually we went to Portugal because we needed to be in some kind of a jacuzzi or swimming pool to make the decision. So my remembering of the event is that actually we had that offer, but we needed to take some time to think and discuss to make sure we would make the right decision, even though I think we were, as you mentioned, pretty aligned. My remembering of the event is that actually we went to Portugal to relax for a couple of days and actually have the ability to be the 3 of us together, because as most people know, Argent is a remote company. So we are not physically together, the three founders. And so, yeah, the way I remember is that actually we went to Portugal because we wanted to be together to actually reply to that offer and commit to that decision.
So yeah, I was gonna explain why we talk a lot about travel and jacuzzis, because first, we don't live in the same city. I live in London. Gerald and Julian are in Brussels, and so we still like to spend time face to face. So we try to find different location, and being in the water is kind of the only place when I'm not on my phone. And so big important discussion happen basically in the water. If not, I'm on my phone and I'm distracted. I'm working on that. But I think that's really how this jacuzzi thing all started.
Definitely.
Right now, talking about Argent, how do you see crypto today?
Well,
Web3, like, what's your frustration? Do you have, what do we need to do better as an industry?
I mean, first of all, I think we are all extremely excited, still extremely excited about crypto, and I think, and blockchain. I think the technology is moving forward and moving in a great direction. If you ask me my frustration, I think, I still feel that we haven't solved any real problem for real people. For me, I would say that's my biggest beef with the ecosystem so far. We feel that a bit less now that the market is a bit down, but when the market is bullish, for me that's something that sometimes I find a bit depressing. There's too much noise and too many people thinking and talking about speculation, and everybody is about making money fast, but they forget about the mission of that technology. So for me, I would say my frustration is this. I think people focus way too much on becoming rich, on speculation and use cases which are not, in my opinion, bringing anything not much to society. I don't want to dismiss speculation, because that's why the technology is where it is today. I mean, this use case was great to stress stress test the technology, to put a lot of capital into the technology. So it's by no means me complaining about that, but I do hope that the next wave of users that will bring to crypto, it's because there is actually a use case that bring values to more or less normal people. And so, yeah, for me, that's at the same time, that's what gets me excited, that mission. But at the same time, sometimes it's part of the frustration that we still haven't solved any real problem for real users.
I see positiveness in the current situation. I spend more time with other founders. You're more, building and in the deep tech. And I would say no more than ever since the last collapse, the various Luna, FTX and all that, I do see people realizing that a lot of what was happening was not real, maybe. And I do see a move back to basics in how people, so even DEF CON, when there was intro to DEF CON, I feel several speakers talked a lot about that, the need to solve real problem, real use cases. And I think it's much more of a narrative now in the community. I see projects going back to basics, like we need to solve payment, remittance, etc. And so I think I would say I have hope. I think actually probably the crashes of the last 12 months have helped people think, have a better approach to that. And the point, we can't. I would say at Argent, we're often the more skeptical of the maximalists. We have always been very vocal that we need to solve real problems, and that was always a bit my reason to start with Gerald and Julian. What people, I've known them for a very long time, and I really think Gerald and Julian are the two most honest people, the least driven by ego and money. I'm maybe the one bringing more the business side, and so investor might not like to hear that two founders don't care about that. But I think my view was always the technology is amazing, but like any tech can be used for good or for less good stuff, and so we should be in it because we have the people who want to be in it for the right reason. And I really see in the bear market more and more founders that are there for the right reason. So in some way, it cleans up a bit from those who are just there for the quick money. The sad part, of course, is that you have amazing company and amazing founders that just don't get funded the same way, and so can't achieve, of course, what they wish. But there's good in every in every life journey, I would say. Julian, maybe another. By the way, we will take. We are listing questions. I know some of you are adding questions on Twitter, and we have Alex in the team trainer, so we'll soon get on there. But one of them is always like the generic one is always like, what's the best advice you have been given? I don't know if there is something you have in mind or something that is more specific to crypto or to startups in general. But that's also a recurring theme. Is like.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that's something that was told to me early in my journey as an entrepreneur. Actually, I don't remember if it's something that someone told me, or actually that's a conclusion I made for myself. But one thing is clear. I mean, specifically when you do a startup, there's a lot of people around you. There's a lot of advisors. There's a lot of people that want to help you, or that have been through it, or that have been there, and they give you advice. And something that I realized is that at the end of the day, you need to live with your decisions, and so you need to follow what you think is right, even if you have people with more experience that have been through it. I mean, every situation in the end is different. So for me, I think that's what I try to live by. And I would say if someone is starting a company, that's the advice I would give them, is only be true to yourself, and always be comfortable with the decision that you make, because at the end of the day, you need to live with it. So for me, I would say that's something that I find important, and that's probably something that I would tell someone if they were asking for my advice.
And I probably even more true in crypto, where I feel people often compare startups to like roller coasters, and I remember you made that comparison to more surfing, meaning you go up and down, but the ground under you is constantly shifting and moving, and it's hard. It's really hard. Where we chains, project, protocol, what's exciting, what's not exciting, changes from a month to the other. I took to like project picking chains now, and there are like there's 2 new chains every month, so we're waiting. It's like things are in constant motion, which I think makes life even harder in that space. Which is why for me at the end, it's hiring and the people we got is probably the most important part, because everything else might change. The one thing that doesn't change is the people who you surround yourself with. So having people who can endure the pain of building in crypto and be, help you in that journey, come with the right ideas, is probably what's been the most important for us, whether it's founders or the team, especially the team, because now there are much more team members than the 3 of us. So. But so we are bullish. Times is good. There's great stuff around. I think if you look at Argent, if you think about Argent, if you look now in a bear market, it's probably when we're launching the most products we have ever launched. Julian, any in particular that gets you excited right now?
I mean, all of them get me excited, but I would say I'm very excited by 2 things that we are launching now. One is this umbrella of product that we call Argent Shield, and that starts with really introducing 2FA, non-custodial 2FA. I think that for me that gets me excited, very excited. And then something we call Web Wallet SDK, which is this SDK that dApps can use on Starknet, and users can really log in with email and password exactly like they would do on Web 2. And that's exactly why I'm really, really excited. I think we started Argent with the will to abstract and to hide all the complexity of blockchain. And I think we are, and in a sense, what we want to do is the best of Web 2, but in Web 3. And by Web 3, I mean without compromising on self-custody and the values that are core to this technology. And I do feel that Argent Shield introducing 2FA like you would have exactly on your Revolut or your Venmo or your N26 application but with self-custody baked in, I think it's amazing. And the same for Web Wallet, letting users that have never heard about blockchain, they just want to play a game. They don't even need to know it's on a blockchain, and they can just do email and password like they would do today on any Web2 application. And under the hood, they have an Argent wallet, an Argent account, but everything is hidden. For me, that's what gets me really excited, reaching the point of really unlocking, reproducing the best of Web2, but in Web3 with true self-custody. So I'm very excited about these two projects.
And then for me, usually I talk about the product. Julian talks about our more technology decision, but I would say right now I'm very bullish on what zkSync and Starknet does. Obviously, that's the project we know the most. But I think on one end, zkSync for us, it's been we are very. I mean, it's been years we are focused on the EVM, and finally having an EVM, but that would evolve and have account abstraction natively as part of the protocol was a huge achievement. I think actually Julian's view was always L2s shouldn't stick exactly to L1. We should use L2s to experiment and to do new things. And then L1 needs more time to evolve for obvious reason. There's so much money at stake. And it's a feature, I would say. While L2 will start fresh, they should differentiate with new features. We see what works. And so being able to work with zkSync, MaterLabs and zkSync Era on having native account abstraction of the EVM chain, I think that was pretty awesome. And Starknet for us was also, I would say, a very different story. It's like we started from a blank sheet. Well, Starknet started from a blank sheet. And so us being able to say, hey, that's how accounts have been working on Ethereum. That's a great model, but can we make this part of the protocol? So it's not only native account abstraction, it's more that standard DOA wallet just don't exist. And so you end up with an entire chain where every single wallet is a smart wallet, whether you're Argent or not. And so things like ERC20 approved don't exist because developer now they can just batch the ERC20 approved with a transaction. Everything is like can become one click. And so Darknet right now, I would say also an exciting phase. We have a new language that looks like Rust, so we can experiment. It's different than Solidity, but on the other end, it's very easy for Rust developer to get in. You have very high TPS coming in May. So I think that will be ZK Rollup have been selling high scalability, but it took time to get there. So I think I would bet that by end of May, June, Darknet has the highest TPS of any chain out there. So I think that will be quite interesting. So yeah, interesting for us. We get two platforms that evolve very quickly, and so a lot we can build upon.
It's true. It's interesting what you mentioned because, clearly, we've always, wanted account abstraction to be native on layer 2s, but it's funny how it's also a question of timing because both Starknet and zkSync had committed to that. They wanted to do that, but actually native account abstraction is not easy. And it's like exactly the moment where they were reaching the point where they needed to choose or to design that the team from the Ethereum Foundation gathered around, ERC 4337 because they wanted to bring account abstraction, but not natively at the application layer on the EVM. And their proposal came exactly at the right time when Starknet and zkSync needed to design their way to make account abstraction natively. And so they could actually took the architecture and 80% of the idea of the design that's in ERC 4337 and put it in the protocol. So I find it also amazing. First of all, is the beauty of building everything in the open because you can pick ideas from different teams that do different things. But it's also, again, a question of timing. It's really ERC 4337 came to life exactly at the moment where Starknet and zkSync needed it. So I find it kind of beautiful in a sense.
Yeah, I think timing was amazing. I don't think we could have had native account abstraction that fast if we didn't have 4337. And actually, the people like Yoav have been contributing to Starknet account abstraction directly. So it's really the same philosophy and mindset behind.
Yeah, and again, the ideas developed then on zkSync and Starknet feed back ERC 4337, and there's some improvements that have been done by MaterLabs that actually went back into ERC 4337. So again, I think this idea of innovating on layer 2 when there's much less at stake is clearly the right way to go.
Looking at the time, I suggest we jump on questions. Guys, to make it simple rather than add speakers and make it messy, we're looking at the questions that people share. There is a, if you look in the Twitter space on the bottom right, there should be a comment button where you can just tweet questions directly to within a Twitter space. So let's take some of them. Interesting. A question from the VDM1. If you weren't building Argent, but were forced to build on top of Argent instead, kind of like a safe module, what is the first thing you would build?
Oof. I'll let you answer that one. But actually, interestingly enough, we wanted to build an application. When we started in 2017, we wanted to build an application on a vertical. And it's the lack of an Argent product that made us actually realize that there was no point building something without having an Argent that would let users interact with that thing. So I've never really questioned that. So I need to think about it a bit. Maybe you have an idea?
So I think, well, obviously you could just build any amazing dApp. That would be awesome. But if it has to be tied to Argent, I think there are stuff that we would love for other people to do. I think there are, whether it's for, centralization reason or because it's not our core business. So I think if you look just at recovery, we build a model of recovery. We call it mostly social recovery, but the reality is that most users are not using it as social. Even our users, most people don't use friends and family. There are regions where we see bigger takeoff of that, but often they trust an entity. So you could imagine companies build around recovery where their job is to do recovery. And there is an amount of money where you might want different type of authentication. You might even want these people to have for example, Argent doesn't have users' identity, but you might want a company that take your ID or your passport, do full KYC, so you know that just by being you, they can trigger recovery that would then take a week on chain, and you always have access. So think about a bank that doesn't have your money, but they can just help you recover your money, but they cannot take it away. So you're non-custodial, but at the same time, you get that safety net. So that's probably something I wouldn't want Argent to do. It would be you don't want to be a non-custodial wallet that have people's identity, but I think you could have a service that focus on that, or things like inheritance. We have a lot of ideas on how our model can work for inheritance, but again, in every country, inheritance law can be very different. You could specialize in that. So I feel adjacent to Argent, there are a lot of areas where at scale we would need companies that really specialize in that field.
Good.
I have another question, probably good for you actually, Julian, from our friend Mentor. Hey Mentor, great to have you here. Retrospectively, how did you guys position yourself on the L2 narrative? I mean, 3-4 years ago, it was definitely not clear how things would play out, especially with the DeFi summer, and L1s popping on. Feel it was a hard decision, especially after a long bear.
That's a very good question. Thank you, Mentor. Well, I think for us it was clear. I think we've always, believed in the Ethereum ecosystem because of the technology, but because of the ecosystem as well, because of all the developers building on it, but also because of the ethos. I think Ethereum is about, not compromising on certain things and making the right trade-off. So I think I wouldn't say we never really questioned. Of course, we discussed, and within the founders, we discussed a lot, but we never really questioned staying in the Ethereum ecosystem. So it was clear for us that, the futures was on L2s. And we always liked this idea of having, Ethereum L1 being the settlement layers somehow, and then having all the application, all the activity happening on layer 2. So for us, it was more a question of which layer 2s to pick and on which one to bet, basically, at such an early stage, because as Itamar, touched earlier, when we realized L2 was our future, L2s were barely just ideas or like nascent technologies, I would say. And there was really two categories. There was the optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, or validity rollups, as some people call them today. So first of all, it was clear for us that we believed in rollups and not in side chains because of the security, guarantees they provide. And then we had to decide between optimistic rollups and ZK rollup. I mean, as you remember, we've discussed. I mean, we know them all very well. We've discussed with all of them for a long time: Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, and Starkware, and they are, I mean, all providing great technology, but I think it was kind of clear for us that the ZK tech was the long-term solution, I would say. And I think no one really questioned that. Even early on, people were saying ZK rollups are the future, but they will take 10 years to come. And so we need to find something earlier. And for that, optimistic rollups, they will be ready much faster. And that's great. And I think, for me at least, with all the discussion we had with ZK Sync and Starkware, we kind of felt that ZK rollups weren't that far away. They would clearly take a little bit more time than optimistic rollup, but for us it was a matter of a year maybe. After a year and a half, so we kind of felt that the ZK tech would come much sooner than people anticipated, and no one questioned, and everybody agreed that it was kind of the long-term solution. And I mean, at Argent, we've always been building for the long term. So it was a relatively easy decision to bet on ZK rollups.
And if I remember, I think, but so far, I think that's clearly the big bet was you convinced us internally that those teams will deliver faster than we think. I mean, some people were talking about ZK rollup coming 5 to 10 years from now. And we made the bet that those teams could deliver. And I think now we clearly see they did. There was, I think, an inherent, and maybe you understand it better than me, but advantage is that for us, ZK rollup kind of had to start from a blank sheet. What I mean by that is that optimistic rollup, so Optimism is very close to Ethereum. That's their strength. It's really to the number of lines of code that differs. They run Geth is very, very, very close to Ethereum. ZK rollup are fundamentally very different tech. And that means there we had the influence the opportunity to influence how basically accounts would work. And I think it was clearly the best opportunity to solve the massive UX issues we saw with the lack of account abstraction. And in some way, I believe a lot of different approach to scaling will work. Every chain most L2s will find ways to scale. I believe, but I'm not the expert there, that ZK can go further. But the reality is not that the strength for us is that people underestimate the pain of being a smart wallet on pure EVM. If you're a wallet like Argent or the Safe, you have actually a lot of compatibility issues because dApps are building for EOAs. And we're not making this an account abstraction talk. But when you go suddenly on a chain where it's native, everything changes. It's easier for us to build. The experience for end users is much better, and dApp developers are building everything with account abstraction in mind. And I think that was for us a big opportunity also in ZK.
Yeah. Maybe let me pick a question that I can, for you. Maybe one from Reman, SoonSwap. What's the long-term plans for Argent X? Will it be available in multi-chains? Do you guys plan to bring AGX to life in near future?
Interesting question. You picked a hard one.
That's why I picked it.
Okay, I would say it's an active topic of discussion, so I can't give you, Roman, a definitive answer today. What is clear is that what we want to see as soon as possible is a more unified Argent experience. So we have been building very quickly on different chains to be able to move fast. We have a desktop product, Argent X, web extension, browser extension that is on Starknet. ZK Sync Era is currently rolling out on mobile. So it can be very confusing for users. So I think at some point, and then we have a web wallet, so another product. So at some point, this will all have to be a unified experience. where as a user, you don't care whether you're on mobile, on desktop, or within an app. And so that will probably push us towards harmonizing which chains is on which platform, etc. I suspect AGX meant a token.
No, I think it's
Um,
Argent X.
no,
I think it's Argent X. Yeah.
but no, Argent X to life. It's already. Do you guys plan to bring Argent X to life? So I suspect it means AGX. I can't share any plan on that right now. I think projects that launch token is the real utility. I haven't yet seen a wallet launching a token that has a real utility. So the typical example people give us, so smart contract wallet, there are smart contracts, you can upgrade the code. So people tell us, hey, you have a token, the governance can upgrade the contract. And the answer of Julian to that is that would decrease the security. You don't want some DAO to be able to upgrade your wallet. Today in Argent, the only person that can upgrade your wallet is yourself, no one else, not Argent, not some DAO. So we will always do what's best for users in the long term. What's best for Argent is what's best for users. I believe if we follow that, we'll make the right decision. And if there is a place where a token will make the product better, stronger, more secure, more decentralized, then that would be worth it.
Cool. I think we should wrap up now, unless you want to touch quickly on some questions.
I still see we have listeners that haven't left. I can quickly scan if we have more questions.
Maybe one from RAM Collection. How can we simplify the onboarding process for new users to Web3, given that being fast with lesser gas fees is not enough? Quick answers is wait for our web wallet SDK and all the product that we launch. That's exactly our mission, and that's exactly what we try to do. So keep following on the Argent products. We really want to simplify the onboarding process for new users to Web3.
Yeah, and I would add there that I think we have a clear path to that. There are a few building blocks that need to be delivered. So web wallet is coming. We will then soon be able to, I think subsidizing of gas or being able to pay gas on Starknet with a C20 token with something we call Paymaster will help massively. And I think when we have also Volition, which will, the technology we will discuss further, we'll see a world where dApps can literally pay for gas. But just to give an example of stuff we already have now in test, that really will simplify. For example, we have this notion of session keys, where you could say, hey, I'm logging into a dApp. I trust that dApp for the next 30 minutes to sign transaction on my behalf with all the security measure you want. And suddenly you're just playing a game. You're not worrying about signing transaction. The experience is super smooth. So I think we have a very clear view and it's down to execution on UX and security. The next big challenge with Argent will be probably how we can help bring to the market real use case, solving real problems. And I think we can, there are a few more questions. We can answer them on Twitter. Yeah, because I think now it's time. Wanted to thank everyone. A lot of people attended, much more than we expected. As I said, we'll continue that. Probably once a month is a good rhythm. We'll try to bring friends to join us in this chat. Thank you, everyone, and have all a great evening or a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.